Most people walk through life only scratching the surface of who they really are. They think their personality, their habits, and the roles they play in society define them, but deep within, untouched and unseen, lie hidden layers of their psyche waiting to be discovered. These parts hold the keys to creativity, healing, deep inner wisdom, and true self-understanding. The problem is, we've been conditioned to stay in the shallow end, to be what others expect, not who we truly are. But if you've ever felt like something's missing or like a stranger to yourself, this is your call to go deeper. Your true potential isn't lost, it's just buried, and the only way to reclaim it is to explore the parts of yourself you've ignored. Here's how to begin unlocking the hidden power of your psyche. Most people confuse their personality with their entire self. They believe they are only the traits they show to the world: confident, quiet, funny, smart, helpful, polite, serious. But this personality is just a small surface layer of the psyche, crafted over time through experience, culture, family expectations, and social adaptation. It's not the full truth of who you are. It's just the mask you've learned to wear to fit in, survive, and be accepted. Beneath that mask lives a deeper self, vast, complex, contradictory, powerful, and until you realize that, you'll keep living a limited version of your life. Your psyche contains not only your conscious thoughts and decisions, but also your unconscious desires, fears, instincts, childhood wounds, forgotten memories, and hidden talents. It's a rich inner world, a deep ocean beneath the surface, but most people never dive in. They only skim the top, and when life feels empty, when joy fades, when confusion creeps in, they can't understand why, because on the surface everything looks fine. That's the trap. You've built a personality that works in the world, but inside, parts of you are locked away and unheard. When you only operate from personality, you suppress parts of your psyche that don't match your image. For example, if you've always been seen as strong and reliable, you might hide your sadness or confusion because you think it's a weakness. Or if you're labeled the nice one, you might repress anger or boundaries. Over time, these suppressed parts don't disappear, they become unconscious, and they begin controlling you from the shadows. They leak out in triggers, in anxiety, in random outbursts, or deep numbness. That's the psyche's way of saying there's more to you than this. Your psyche is like a vast house, and your personality is just the front room, clean, curated, presentable, but behind closed doors are rooms filled with old memories, creative urges, wild emotions, spiritual longing, unresolved grief, and raw truth. If you never explore them, you'll never know who you truly are, and worse, you'll stay stuck in a life that feels shallow, performative, or disconnected. The danger of confusing personality with self is that you start editing your soul to fit into a role. You become a character in someone else's story, acting, pleasing, performing, while your deeper self remains unseen. This is where the inner void comes from. This is why people with perfect lives often feel empty inside. They've built an identity that fits the world but not their own soul. True fulfillment can't come from pleasing expectations. It comes from embodying your full self, even the messy, wild, confusing parts. To unlock the hidden parts of your psyche, you must stop clinging to your personality as your truth. It's not bad, it just isn't everything. Your real power lies in exploring what's beyond it. Start by noticing when you feel like you're acting or performing. Pay attention to the moments when you censor yourself, when you hide parts of who you are to keep things smooth. These are clues. They point to the deeper parts of you, the ones you've buried. Journaling, therapy, shadow work, deep meditation, solitude, these aren't just self-help tools. They are keys. They help you move past the surface and into the depths. As you go deeper, you'll uncover forgotten passions, suppressed pain, unexpected truths. You'll realize you're not just one thing, you're many, and that's not a flaw, it's your power. You are more than the image you present, more than your habits, more than your successes or failures. You are a living psyche, layered, mysterious, constantly evolving. Your job isn't to shrink yourself into a tidy identity, it's to explore and integrate everything you are. Once you realize your personality is only a doorway, you'll stop guarding it and start walking through it. And that's when transformation begins, not by becoming someone else but by finally becoming more of who you've always been, hidden, waiting, ready. Most people grow up learning not how to express who they are, but how to adapt to who they're supposed to be. You were trained to behave, to conform, to please, to perform. The wild, original, spontaneous parts of you, the parts that laughed too loud, asked too many questions, or felt too deeply, were often dismissed, criticized, or ignored. And so, piece by piece, you buried them, not because you were weak but because you were surviving. You wanted to be loved, accepted, and safe, but in doing so, you began to lose touch with the parts of you that made you unique. This is the silent tragedy of the modern psyche. People don't just forget who they are, they repress it. They suppress their authentic voice to avoid judgment. They abandon their creativity to fit into roles. They tone themselves down to not be too much, and over time, they become strangers to their own souls. They don't know what they want anymore, what they believe in, or what they're even here for. The deeper truth is, they haven't changed. They've just locked away the very qualities that made them different, original, and alive. Repression doesn't happen all at once. It happens gradually, like a slow erosion of the soul. The child sings and is told to be quiet. A teenager shares a dream and is told it's unrealistic. A young adult feels passion but is told to be practical. These moments might seem small, but they accumulate. And the result? A life lived in quiet desperation, performing roles, fulfilling expectations, but never really feeling at home within. What made you unique as a child is not gone. It's just hidden under years of conditioning. Maybe you were deeply sensitive and felt everything around you, but you were told to toughen up. Maybe you were imaginative, seeing stories and symbols everywhere, but were told to be realistic. Maybe you loved being alone with your thoughts but were labeled antisocial. Whatever it was, you learned to tuck it away. And yet these very traits were not flaws, they were clues to your inner genius. Here's the painful irony. The parts of yourself you rejected to fit in are the exact parts you need to reclaim to feel alive again. The world didn't need another version of who you were told to be. It needed you, fully, raw, unfiltered. But society rewards sameness. It rewards those who follow rules, blend in and stay silent. So you traded authenticity for approval. And in doing so, you sacrificed depth for comfort. That's why so many people feel empty. Not because they lack something, but because they've buried everything that made them feel real. To unlock who you really are, you must go back, not to become your past self, but to retrieve what you lost along the way. Ask yourself, what parts of me did I silence to be loved? What passions did I ignore to feel safe? What truths did I hide to be accepted? These questions are not just reflective, they are revolutionary. Because in asking them, you begin the process of reversal, of unrepressing, of reclaiming. This journey isn't easy. Repressed traits don't just come back softly. They often return as symptoms. An artist who never creates might feel depressed. A leader who hides their voice might feel anxious. A lover who numbs emotion might feel disconnected. These symptoms are not dysfunctions, they are messages. Your soul is trying to remind you of what you've buried. It's asking you to return, not to who you were, but to who you always were before the world told you otherwise. Reclaiming your uniqueness is not about becoming special, it's about becoming honest. It means allowing your weirdness, your intensity, your quietness, your wildness. It means letting yourself feel what you feel, want what you want, and express what you believe, even if it doesn't please everyone. Because freedom doesn't come from acceptance by others, it comes from full acceptance of yourself. And in that space, your true power begins to emerge. It's no coincidence that those who feel the most lost are often the ones who've hidden the most of themselves. They're not broken, they're blocked. And that block isn't from lack of effort, it's from trying too hard to be someone they're not. The moment you stop trying to become who the world wants you to be and start allowing yourself to be who you are, you begin to unlock your original code. And with that comes clarity, energy and alignment. You are more than what you've shown the world. You are deeper than your image, stronger than your silence and brighter than the roles you've played. But to access that truth, you must stop abandoning the very things that made you different. You must unlearn the lie that your uniqueness is a problem. It's not. It's your compass. Your purpose is encoded in the things you were once told to hide. So go back, reclaim your voice, reclaim your weird, reclaim your power. Because the life you're searching for isn't somewhere out there, it's locked inside everything you've repressed, and the key is already in your hands. The parts of you that you've avoided, denied or suppressed, your anger, your jealousy, your insecurity, your fear, these are not mistakes in your design, they are messengers. In the language of the psyche, they are the shadow. And while most people run from these darker aspects of themselves, hoping to remain only in the light, true growth begins when you turn around and face them. Because what you reject controls you in silence. But what you integrate empowers you in truth. Your shadow isn't your enemy, it's your map, and within it lie the very keys to self-discovery. The shadow is formed the moment you decide consciously or unconsciously that parts of yourself are unacceptable. Maybe you were too emotional, so you learned to hide your tears. Maybe you were too outspoken, so you learned to shrink your voice. Maybe you made a mistake and felt shame, so you buried your desires altogether. But what's repressed doesn't disappear. It hides, it waits, and it shapes your thoughts, your choices and your reactions from behind the scenes. It's why you overreact, why you sabotage, why you attract the same patterns over and over again, not because you're cursed but because your shadow is trying to speak. What most people don't understand is that the shadow isn't just about negativity, it also hides your power. If you repressed your rage, you might have buried your strength. If you hid your vulnerability, you may have blocked your capacity for love. If you silenced your ambition, you might have shut down your purpose. The shadow contains everything you've disowned, including the traits that were meant to guide you. And until you consciously reclaim them, you'll keep living a life that feels off, even when everything looks fine on the surface. Facing the shadow means choosing honesty over image. It means admitting to yourself, yes, I feel jealous, or yes, I crave attention, or yes, I sometimes feel like I'm not enough. Not to shame yourself, but to understand, to bring awareness to what's been unconscious. Because only when you look at it can you learn from it. Only when you accept it can you transform it. The moment you stop pretending to be perfect is the moment you start becoming whole. The shadow often appears in your projections. When you criticize others harshly, it's usually because they reflect a trait you haven't accepted in yourself. When someone triggers you, it's rarely about them. It's about the mirror they hold up to your own disowned parts. That coworker who's arrogant. Maybe you were taught confidence was wrong. That friend who's too emotional. Maybe you learned to hide your own pain. Every trigger is an invitation to look inward, not to judge yourself but to reclaim what's been lost. But shadow work isn't just about digging into pain. It's about finding your hidden light. The traits you envy in others often reveal your potential. The desires you've buried often contain your direction. That fear you keep avoiding. It might be guarding the door to your power. Facing your shadow isn't a punishment. It's a portal, one that leads directly to the version of you that's real, raw and awake. This journey is not for the faint of heart. It will break illusions. It will confront your ego. It will ask you to sit with discomfort instead of running from it. But in that confrontation, something beautiful happens. You stop living in fragments. You begin to unify. The guilt dissolves, the shame lifts, and in its place is a quiet strength, a knowing. You realize you don't have to be someone else to be worthy. You don't have to be light all the time to be lovable. You are human, and your wholeness includes every shade of you. The shadow, when left unexplored, creates chaos, but when integrated, it creates depth. It gives you the kind of self-awareness that can't be shaken, the kind of maturity that doesn't react but responds, the kind of presence that heals not only yourself but everyone you interact with. Because when you've faced your own darkness, you stop fearing it in others. You become a space where truth is safe to exist, and that is power. True self-discovery begins the moment you stop chasing who you think you're supposed to be and start exploring who you've always been, beneath the roles, beneath the masks, beneath the fear. The shadow will guide you there if you're willing to listen, not through perfection, but through presence, not through denial, but through deep radical acceptance. So stop hiding from the parts of you that hurt. They are not proof that you're broken. They are evidence that you're human. And more than that, they are the breadcrumbs that lead you back to your soul. Your anger wants to teach you boundaries. Your shame wants to teach you compassion. Your fear wants to teach you courage. Every shadow holds a lesson. Every wound holds wisdom. And if you're brave enough to turn inward and listen, you will uncover a version of yourself that's more powerful, more grounded, and more real than anything you've ever pretended to be. Because in the end, the real you isn't just the light. It's the light and the dark, integrated into one. That is wholeness. That is freedom. That is who you've always been, waiting to be remembered. Integration is not about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you were before the world told you who to be. When you begin the journey inward and uncover your hidden parts, your shadow, your wounds, your suppressed emotions, it's not enough to simply become aware of them. Awareness is the first step, but integration is what transforms. To truly become whole, you must take every fragmented piece of yourself, every part you denied, rejected or abandoned, and invite it back into your heart without judgment, because only what is welcomed can be healed, only what is accepted can be transformed. Integration means no longer choosing between the good and bad parts of you, but seeing that both exist within the same human soul. The anger that you fear might also hold your courage. The sadness you suppress might contain your capacity to feel deeply. The envy you're ashamed of might point toward your buried dreams. Integration is radical honesty. It's facing these parts without trying to fix, fight, or flee. Instead of saying, I shouldn't be like this, you say, this is part of me. Let me understand it. And that shift from rejection to compassion is where healing begins. When you're not integrated, you live in conflict with yourself. You try to be spiritual but suppress your rage. You try to be strong but silence your vulnerability. You wear a mask that doesn't fit, and deep down you feel disconnected from others, from the world, and most painfully from yourself. The more you resist your truth, the more fragmented you become, and fragmentation leads to confusion, burnout, depression, and that nagging feeling of something's missing. What's missing is